This is Advantame, and it's 20,000 times sweeter than sugar. In other words, an ounce of this stuff is as sweet as 2,800 cups of sugar, which by the way equals about 1,200 pounds. In this video, I'm gonna tell you about Advantame as well as 3 other high-intensity artificial sweeteners you're probably consuming. Advantame is one of the newest artificial sweeteners in the market, and as I mentioned before, it's about 20,000 times sweeter than sugar. It was developed by Ajinomoto, a Japanese multinational food and biotechnology corporation. They announced the creation of Advantame in 2008, and the FDA approved it as safe in 2014. To make this decision, the FDA reviewed data from 37 animal and human studies designed to identify possible toxic effects. Now, even though Advantame is much sweeter than many other artificial sweeteners and chemically more stable, it still hasn't replaced them in any major way. In fact, I wasn't able to find Advantame being used as a sweetener in any major consumer product in the market today. However, I did find it for sale in its pure form for $176 per ounce, which seems pricey, but remember, that's well over 1,000 pounds worth of sugar sweetness. Like with all novel ingredients, it may take a long time for the market to adopt it in a meaningful way, especially when there's already other alternatives being used across the board, like the next one on the list. Aspartame is one of the most common artificial sweeteners used in thousands of products worldwide. It's about 200 times sweeter than sugar, and it's the sweetener behind the popular diet sodas. Aspartame has the same amount of calories per gram as sugar, but because it's so sweet, you only need very little, and as a result, it contributes virtually no calories. But the question is it safe? Well, aspartame is one of the most studied food additives in the human food supply, and it has been reviewed by over 100 governmental regulatory bodies. They found that it's safe as long as you don't drink more than 50 milligrams per kilogram of body mass, which equals about 20 cans of diet soda per day for the average adult. And now that we're talking about sodas, let's talk about another sweetener that's also widely used in sodas and all types of sugar-free drinks. Sucralose is the active sweetener behind the Splenda. It was discovered in 1976, and it's about 600 times sweeter than sugar. And like other artificial sweeteners, sucralose also has no calories and no impact on blood sugar levels. Today, sucralose is used in a wide range of products from soft drinks and candies to baked goods and sauces. Sucralose is heat stable, which makes it a much easier ingredient to use for food manufacturers. In terms of safety, well, the FDA and many global health organizations, including the European Food Safety Authority and the World Health Organization, have evaluated sucralose as well as deemed it as safe for consumption. This is as long as it's consumed in reasonable amounts, which seem to be 5 milligrams per kilogram of body mass per day, which equals about 23 packets of Splenda per day for the average adult. However, having said that, there is still a lot of doubts as to how safe sucralose and all these artificial sweeteners for that matter actually are, especially when it comes to the impact that it may have on the gut microbiome. By the way, if you want to stay away from all this stuff and would rather use a natural, low glycemic sweetener, please consider buying our monk fruit extracts. Close to 6,000 people buy them every single month, and is the reason I'm able to make these videos. Click the link in the description below to get 10% off your first order on our online store, and you can also find them on Amazon and Walmart.com. Just search for Transparency Foods. Alright, let's go back to the video. Finally, there's Saccharin. Saccharin is the sweetener behind Sweet and Low. It was discovered in 1879, and it's one of the oldest artificial sweeteners. It is about 300 to 400 times sweeter than sugar, and it has no impact on blood sugar levels. In the 1970s, there were a lot of concern about its safety after studies suggested that it might cause cancer in lab rats. This led to a temporary warning label on products containing saccharin, and many food and beverage manufacturers moved away from saccharin and used aspartame instead. However, after further studies, it was found that the cancer risk was specific to rats, not humans. And by the year 2000, the warning label was removed, and saccharin was deemed safe for consumption by the FDA and other health authorities. Now, even though a lot of companies never went back to using saccharin, we can still find it today in a variety of sugar-free products like soft drinks, candies, baked goods, and others. Also, as I mentioned before, it is the active sweetener in Sweet and Low. In fact, Sweet and Low is a combination of saccharin and dextrose, which is sugar.